I'm taking them in an order, but well, if you want me, then go up you go. I don't know what difference it's going to make, but away you go then.
Well, just because that's the way it's normally done, Ken. I'm not.
Oh, well,
I don't know why we would depart from the normal procedure. I just couldn't understand that.
I'm surprised it's such a conservative approach by you.
I'm very concerned with procedure, actually, and we'll discover that later tonight when there's going to be a big row about procedure and the move by some to gag the smaller parties.
Anyway, let's get on with what we're addressing.
I will,
here,
yeah, but just seeing as we were discussing procedure. Yeah, this is one law for the poor and one law for the rich. That's what it is. For some time I have been citing, although there's many examples of this, there's a number of examples of vulture funds using loopholes in the Residential Tenancies Act, which were left by the last government, and indeed the previous government before that, designed or left, I don't know, to facilitate vulture funds and unscrupulous landlords in evicting people. And when tenants in these situations successfully challenge and expose the dishonesty of the vulture funds, as has happened on 2 or 3 occasions in the St Helens Court complex that I've told the Minister about, where it was absolutely clear that the claim for refurbishment that the vulture fund was using to evict people was completely bogus. They didn't need to evict people in order to do the refurbishments. In fact, when you looked at the apartments that they were refurbishing, it was pretty clear that they didn't need to refurbish them at all, or the refurbishments were so minor that they certainly didn't require eviction. In that particular block, there are 1 or 2 private owners. Most of them were tenants of the vulture fund, but there were 1 or 2 private owners. And strangely enough, the electrical works that the vulture fund claimed justified evicting people would have required the entire complex, including the privately owned apartments, to have been vacated if they were telling the truth to the PRTB. And of course, we pointed this out ourselves, and Threshold and the tenants pointed this out to the PRTB. What the vulture fund was lying. And the PRTB agreed in that case, and that effort to mass evict those tenants fell on those grounds. Although this was the second time that vulture fund had tried to evict them, and then there was a third attempt to evict them. So they ground down half of the tenants, just left. They said, we can't take this anymore. Even though it was clear these vulture funds were lying to the PRTB, lying to the tenants, lying to the PRTB, because all they wanted to do was get the tenants out, get vacant possession, maximise the value of the property, or dramatically increase the rent and get around the rent caps. I personally think they may even, I know I've talked to the Minister about intervening and buying that block. I personally think there's a possibility, but we should test it out, and I really hope the Minister will, that they're lying about planning to sell it. I think there's a possibility that the company is actually a shell company operating for other people. You know, there's a lot of funny stuff going on, right? But the point is, these people won't be criminalised. But somebody who tries to prevent themselves and their family from being evicted into homelessness, particularly in the situation of a public health pandemic, I'd do anything for my family. Would you not, Minister? To stop them being put out on the street, if you knew that was the alternative, against a landlord that you knew was just evicting you to make money. Because that's what we're talking about. As people driven by money and wanting to maximise the money they can make out of a property, being willing to put families and children out on the street, and particularly so in the midst of a pandemic. If I was that family, if I was in that situation, I would do anything to protect my children from that. And you want to criminalise them. It's really shocking. You know, you're a Republican Party. What do you think, you know, small peasant farmers in this country did faced with British landlords trying to throw them off the land? Would you say they might have been a bit dishonest with the landlords who were trying to evict them for whatever reasons? I think they might have been, but I think we'd mostly sympathise with them in trying to resist those evictions. So it really is shocking that while these greed-driven vulture funds and unscrupulous landlords will be allowed to do whatever they want to do to get people out for money and won't be criminalised if they happen to be dishonest in their efforts to do that, but a family who are doing nothing more, or a household who are doing nothing more than trying to ensure they're not made homeless in the midst of a pandemic will be criminalised. I really think you should accept our amendment and recognise that this is gross double standards and applying different standards to the rich and the powerful as against the standards being applied to vulnerable people trying to keep a roof over their head.